In the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, Exodia, the Forbidden One, is quite famously known to have been a card that was so powerful it had to be sealed into 5 different pieces. And once all 5 pieces came together, you would win the game. Now, of course, anybody that's actually played this game competitively knows that Exodia kind of sucks. But these days, the true powerhouse in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the card known as Max C, ladies and gentlemen. That's the strongest card. It's been banned for years in the TCG, and it seemed like the TCG was really better off for it. Despite our product structure not being as good, our pricing not being as good, just very least, the TCG did not have Max C, unlike the OCG and Master Duel. However, this victory would end up being a bit short-lived with the arrival of the Charmies, Perulia, then Fuelos, and then finally Meowls, each containing, honestly, not even a true third of Maxie's power, because, you know, if let's say your opponent is playing Millennium cards and they try to summon out their spell monsters, you don't have a Charmy for that. But Maxie does work. Regardless, though, these Charmies do, to some degree, approximate Maxie's power, and due to that fact, there has been a lot of discourse as to whether these Charmy cards should get the same treatment that Maxie did get in the TCG, which was to be taken out back in the shed and just fucking blasted the shit out of, okay? And I'm here. Perhaps in 5 years, I will look like one of those French monarchy defenders from the French Revolution. But I will tell you that the proletariat class needs Fuelos. Because, first of all, it's not just your card advantage, it's our card advantage. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the mulcharmy propaganda video. If you do not want me to be debunking the common myths about mulcharmy that everybody is spewing about how much they hate them and how they're basically as bad as Maxi, that they're, no, dude, I will convince you that not only are they pretty good, they're not even a necessary evil, they actually provide a pretty cool gameplay loop to Yu-Gi-Oh!, help balance against the strong decks while also allowing us to have those strong decks available for those who enjoy using them. And I think that the real problem that we're facing, the real stress everybody's feeling about these mulcharmies right now, is going to blow over, you know, one way or another down the line, maybe even as soon as Justice Hunters format, because Malice and Mitsurugi are the real problems. So let's just jump into it. I want to first start with this chart. This chart is from Nerd Factor YGO on Twitter.com. He released this chart to talk about his frustrations, their frustrations. I actually don't know their pronouns, sorry. Their frustrations with Charmies. And it came down to this idea that Charmies always boil down to these 4 situations, and it still creates a lopsided mini game gameplay loop that does not fix the problems that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has fundamentally. Now, it doesn't necessarily say what those problems are, but it kind of hints towards them. Or I guess you could kind of argue the first one says what they are. So, firstly, I would like to actually go over these examples, and then I want to examine 2 things. The first thing, are these, the way that these examples are described, are they actually accurate to the scenarios that you see with the Charmies? And the second thing I want to cover is, are these actually all of the situations? I saw Farfa cover these cards, and I know that his emotional ass that is very biased against Charmies and Maxi was just going to run with this because it fits his agenda, but we've all got agendas. Let's see if this fits my agenda, and then let's check if it actually fits the facts, the reality, okay? I am of the mulcharmy agenda. I will be very proud of it, and I am in the anti-Droll Lockbird army. So let's just jump into this. Situation 1, I'm going first uninterrupted. I will end on more interrupts than you have cards in hand. I win. This is true in the context that we're assuming no Charmy, right? This is true for like Malice and Mitsu in post Allen, and I kid you not, no other deck. Imagine you put Vanquish Soul pre Justice Hunters into this same equation, right? Let's actually look at which decks go into this equation. This is not necessarily going to be true because there are a bunch of one-off hand traps that do affect most decks. And going first, although this is saying going first uninterrupted, right? Like I will say this is the key word, but this is kind of deceptive because let's be honest, Charmy is not the only hand trap that exists, nor do Charmy exists like in decks that aren't using those hand traps. Charmy pretty much goes with a bunch of other hand traps. You use Charmy to try to draw into those weaker hand traps so you have more hand traps available to deal with your opponent using more fucking cards than are actually in their hand. Because that's how advantage in Yu-Gi-Oh works. Every card has 3 effects, right? It's absurd. So this is already like uninterrupted. They're not just drawing no Charmy, they're drawing no hand traps. They have 5 starters, right? So this I also just find this to be unrealistic just on the face of it. The chances of you having like the types of, I would say, let's be, if we're playing 3 Charmy and then also probably 12 hand traps, right? Let's say we're playing 15 hand traps. Okay. 86.28%. So this is a 100 minus 86.28% chance of happening, which if I do my math correctly, that's basically 13.72% chance. So we're describing 4 situations, and one of those situations can only happen like 13.72% of the time, and multiply that with the times 0.5% of losing winning the gyro, right? So, okay, interesting. Situation number 2, the fix. I Charmy you. You're ending on 1 to 2 interruptions. I start with 6+ cards in hand. You can't Charmy me back. I'm going first with the battle phase. I win. This doesn't work either. Now, if this said Maxi, I would agree, but it doesn't say Maxi. And the reason why that's significant. Okay, let's actually look at an example. This is a common example in this specific format. And maybe I can compare, I'll compare it to 2 different formats. Let's talk about the format when Uolos was actually introduced. And let's say we had a Snake Eye Ash plus Diabellstar opening. And we have 3 miscellaneous cards. They could be they're probably hand traps, right? We're going to be generous. We're not going to say we drew like a Snake Eye Diabellstar or Flamebird. We're just going to say that, okay? This is player 1. Player 2 has 1 Fua. They have 1 Imperm. And then 3 starters, right? Let's for the sake of this argument, let's just say so that it's like it kind of evens out like what they have. So player 1, they discard a card, they go -1, so now this becomes so we're now down to, we go in main phase 1, we go Diabellstar, pitch 1, and there's not really a good opportunity to use Fuelos yet. Diabellstar, pitch 1, we activate the effect for Diabellstar. And they use Imperm, so now we're down to 1 card on field. So we have Diabellstar on field. We have Ash in hand, and 2 miscellaneous cards. And so Imperm is now used. Now they're down to 4. Now they're down to 3 starters plus Fua. Their next move is to normal Ash, normal summon Ash, go into Poplar, go into Temple, and then Temple into SC Diabellstar, all that stuff. And this whole time, now when you actually go into activating the Fua, it's going to have a pretty decent impact. This is, of course, a format where also crossouts were available at 3. Triple Tactics Talent was available at 3. So using this Fua into this situation would not necessarily net you as much. But just keep in mind, this version of this deck, Rhoda, this is after this is after Fiendsmith got its Lacrima hit. This is after Snake Eye Ash went to 1, Poplar went to 1. Like, this is when they were relying on Deception, and they've used up their Diabellstar, they're minus a card, and now they have to kind of play. But they've been able to set up the Ash, Poplar, Temple. They now have to start to worry about things like, how am I going to be able to play through Nib? How am I going to be able to play through, X, Y, and Z, right? And then now, like, this is, you get to an opportunity where, like, dropping Fua is pretty decent, because they're going to start to, the only thing that they can really do to be able to, and you don't even have to do it here, because the link ones are much worse. You can let them link off just a tiny bit, get that link 1, and then when the Poplar goes to grave and they're ready to go Ash plus Poplar into like Flamebird or Oak, they get to play into the Fua. You get to draw a card, and then you will keep getting to draw a lot of cards while they set up a play. And then at best, they'll go into like IP. They will make an honest to God half board. But here's the key. Here's the key I want to impress on you guys. Is that we also had this additional imperm, right? And it took having those 2 starters in hand to be able to start getting plays, and even then Fua gets a couple of draws and things start to even out. Because before we even got a great opportunity to use Fua, we got Ash and a Poplar and a Temple into Diabellstar. We got like 5 cards just right there. And it is now, Fua is like good and it helps you win, and it still doesn't guarantee a win because Snake Eye will be able to produce a lot of the advantage that it needs. Now imagine in the most recent format against that same set of interruptions, right? Fua and Imperm in the hands of player 2, which I should have written first. Now instead we have March Hare plus Dormouse. Now let's just say player 1. I mean, if you think about it, if we have 3 miscellaneous cards, the cards that we're really worried about are the ones like Impulse could hurt us, and maybe Impulse is a card they could have, right? Impulse is a card they could have that also got added, and they want to play around like Impulse on the Dormouse summon or something down the line could hurt. Dormouse, just normal summon and using Imperm when you have no other way to do it. Like, sure, you will be able to extend with March Hare just in general to be able to dodge the Imperm. But there's literally multiple options, because you could start with normal summon Dormouse. And then what are they going to do? They're going to try to Imperm it immediately. Like, that's just a neg. You go into Lingaribo. This also threatens to your opponent the idea that you might have like a backup Adagnister or that sort of thing available for you to start like making some crazy plays where their Fuelos is going to be much weaker to actually be able to handle all of the advantage you're going to be getting, because you're going to be getting a lot of advantage that's going to be coming through the hand. So then you use March Hare, and then you'll end up in a spot. You'll summon out the March Hare. You'll go to use the Dormouse effect, and now like let's say that they also had in this earlier one Impulse, 2 starters, this one Impulse here, and then that Impulse would also be able to hit Ash when it tries to go for the summon for Flamebird, right? And then that's just game over. In this case, if they also have the Imperm and the Impulse, you're just able to play through such a significant amount, because if they try to go through for Impulse here, you get to use the Lingaribo to negate it, and then it summons out the Dormouse. They try to go for Dormouse now, and then they hit it with Imperm. And now we've cycled 2 cards before we even have a great opportunity to be able to use it. And now imagine all of these situations if it was Max C. Dude, you would just slam that bitch on the fucking table immediately. In this one, you would go draw phase, Max C. You're worried like talented cross out would be kind of common. Cross out and Ash and called by would have to be your out for it. But if you just resolve Maxi, you resolve Maxi. Same thing with the next situation. Just resolve Maxi and you will get a draw for March Hare, a draw for Dormouse, a draw for Lingeribo, a draw for all of these. Dude, we got to get this extra deck summon out before they had an opportunity to use Fuelos. And if this player decided, okay, if they have March Hare and I have this Fuelos in my hand, and then they've just normal summoned Dormouse, do I wait on the normal summon to like? Do I just like put out the Fuelos right then and there so that if they go into a Lingeribo type of play, then I get a draw? Or because you see that you also have the Imperm that you want to be able to resolve. Do you go for the Imperm first, so that you go for Fua Chain Imperm on Dormouse, so you can be like, okay, like I already know that they're if they have another extender in hand, they're just going to play through the Imperm anyway. So do I want to try to force them to play into the Fuelos, which might be my only way of guaranteeing things and could maybe make my Impulse a bit more live? But then in that case, they still get to make the Lingeribo. Then the March Hare, which is like, you know, one of the many the extenders that they could have in this same spot. You could also be backup at Ignis or, you know, something like that. Go March Hare banish. We want to go for the Impulse, and then they have a negate for the Impulse, and now we've cycled through these 3 cards, and we get like for the Lingeribo, since we shotgun the Fua, we get like 1 draw back, which isn't the worst, but like dude, they're at 3 cards and they've done literally nothing to your actual plays. Like they haven't actually stopped you in any significant way on any of your starters. They're still going to play. So then the question is, okay, then do I want to save these for later? Well, no, you can't save them for later. They're going to set up the trap. They're going to set up the cards that are going to be able to like play around these things. And this deck does it in such an efficient way that like Snake Eye was not able to do at the same capacity to be able to deal with it, which is why Fuelos was like enough to actually put a bit of a dent, but still also not too much that like Snake Eye just had no way to play. And the other decks that they were going against would be Snake Eye, that will have the same type of problem against hand traps. These are decks that are playing like these so many hand traps. They're going to have other cards available. These 3 miscellaneous cards are going to be able to eat through their starters the same way that their 2 hand traps went through our 2 starters. Because hand traps and starters trade pretty well. It's just when you start to establish a board, then trading your starters into a board plus hand traps is basically impossible. And that's the thing that Fuelos helps to like mitigate pretty well, while adding a layer of skill, as we see compared to Maxi. You just windmill that shit. Fuelos, you literally have to get them to play into it. So okay, so this is just disingenuous, right? This is just inaccurate. Okay, so 2 inaccurate situations already. Situation 3, they have the Ash Blossom for it. This isn't really accurate either. This basically boils down to this type of situation where, again, if it's Malice and Mitsu, they'll do this. And I'll be real, there will be times where Malice and Mitsu will see that Charmy and they will look at their hand and they're like, dude, I have the Ash, but I can play through this. And then now I will have a board and I will also have an Ash Blossom for their key cards, which might be more important than using it on their Fuelos, right? Like drawing cards is not going to be as important as the actual starters that get played. There's only so many starters that the player is going to be able to play during that turn that Ash Blossom would help you stop in the first place, along with the whole board that you're creating. So this situation, it boils a lot down to the similar situation, but it's still a little bit different due to the fact that Um, Now that means that you've genuinely like traded these like cards. The math here just works differently. Like statistically, that means we've determined what are, what's behind the door there basically, and now we're left with a 4 card opening hand out of instead of the 5 card. So it's a little bit different. But I don't know. It's still, you're again, only if it's Mitsu or Malice is that going to like FT. Um, and 2 Charmies. This is like, okay, anyone that's not Malice or Mitsu automatically loses. This is true. This is true. They would probably automatically lose to a double Charmy being able to resolve. Now keep in mind, also there's overlap between some of these situations. What if like they have the 2 Charmy and this guy has the Ash. Now we've like gotten back to this scenario, which again we've seen is actually probably the most nuanced one because there are so many different things that could happen. In situation 4, you're complaining about whether they're hard once per turn or not, and it's like, yeah, that is pretty like crazy, but part of the reason is because A, it's able to like mitigate against this, and B, like Max C, what it intends to do for the game, and I think this is what a lot of people miss. Max C itself is evil, but it the path to evil is paved in good intentions. Truly, in this scenario, Max C was a card that they always balanced around. They were like, this is the thing that's going to help balance the game for the big combos that people turn 1, right? And especially for decks that are lower powered than those other ones balancer. Then the problem became that you can keep them behind a board. Um, that it's also pretty good in the top deck for a lot of decks that are making these disruptions that summon a bunch of stuff on your turn. Now you top deck it. That means that the player 2 has a higher chance for actually being able to draw it, and simultaneously player 2 has a lower chance of actually able to resolve it. Whereas player 1, right? Especially in Master Duel, this I've literally gone through this, and I've been on the receiving end, and I've also done this to others, where there's an Appaloosa on board and there's a Maxi. Go over to Maxi, they're like, want to ash that, and it's like, yeah, well, great, Appaloosa negate. Then my Maxi then I just win because I have resolved a Maxi and I have a fucking Appaloosa, right? Um, that it's so unfair, right? But you don't get that kind of situation at all with the Charmies. Um, while the Charmies do get a lot of the benefits, where people can't just have like, it doesn't stop people from playing entirely, but it also gives them the benefits. So what I want to cover though is I don't think this is just this they say Charmy and they don't say Fuelos in particular. And my kind of hunch is, I mean, I do think this is mostly about Fuelos because Fuelos is the one that people deem to be the strongest. But I honestly think this also comes down to all the Charmies are made unequally, right? Like Fuelos is obviously the best Charmy, but Perulio is also pretty good. And we've seen in recent formats, especially during the Malice Mitsurugi format, people playing 6 Charmies, people playing 9 Charmies, people feeling like they need to main the Charmies to beat these decks, including these decks themselves, playing much higher counts of Charmy to deal with each other. And it makes it where it feels like rogue decks are completely incapable to compete. But let's be honest, decks that were not these 2 decks, if we didn't have the Charmy, those decks would be even worse. We saw Orcus Fiendsmith actually be able to take on the like YCS and win it. And I would say that a big part of it truly is because Charmy was there. It was a pretty decent part of his strategy. He would make himself go second after game 1 at times. The Charmies ended up mattering significantly for weaker decks. And the truth is, and I think this is one of the greatest things about Charmy, I honestly think they're designed in such a like pitch perfect way that they are able to benefit decks more or less based on how powerful they are, because the stronger, like with Maxi, a strong deck will still want to play Maxi regardless of the 9 times, like 9.9 times out of 10 they want to have Maxi in the deck. It'll always just help, and it will work like cohesive. They will work synchronously. But Charmy, it's not as clear cut whether people would want to with those stronger decks. They actually end up helping the weaker decks a little. They end up becoming consistency cards for decks that are less um like Malice can still be screwed over. And let's actually like look at this math, right? I think I had this labeled. I had this labeled already. I tried to make this video earlier and I had a bunch of audio problems, so I'm just gonna go over the work that I've already done. Okay. The three Fulos works in such a situation where you have the three Fulos and you're going, you put it in your deck, your going second becomes good, and it becomes a lot better than your going first becomes worse, right? Which is very, very important. There are cards that you add to your engine can that improve your going second without really being a detriment at all to going first. They can improve your going first while slightly benefiting your going second. For example, when we added Fiendsmith cards back like last year to Snake Eye, it made it so that Snake Eye actually had better going second capabilities than it had before, due to the fact that cards like Engraver and Desiree can actually function as types of board breakers. Whereas, Snake Eye itself, its engine was not super board breaky. It was just kind of relying purely on the toolbox. You can now use like Fiendsmith Engraver to equip to Requiem to start to bait out more interactions, which is really important, right? But Fulos, on the other hand, you go first, you see this card, and unless you are specifically Ryziel or something that's using like level fours, not really going to help you in much capacity. Going to be a dead card. It might be like a discard at worst. It was like it had good synergy with like the Rage of the Abyss version of Snake Eye when we had the Azamina cards, due to the fact that it did function as a free discard for Sinful Spoils of Deception. But like that card was already I always thought it was a little bit of a cope, because any starter that causes, it's like making you discard a fucking monster as cost and then could just be ashed or ogred, is just not going to be as good, like as high quality of a starter as everything else in your deck. It like it yeah, there was synergy, but you literally, it needs to fit the deck. It's not like Maxi where again it's just unlimited. And sometimes there will be formats where it's like, oh my god, fucking retaliating. I think retaliating C is the one is good. And now when it gets removed, I get to search a Max C. Who fucking made this? Like, it's stupid. But anyway, and we can look. The chances of seeing multiples of these Charmies is 3.64. So I also want to go back to this situation. This is a this is a situation that happens 3.64% of the time. This is a situation that happens 13.72% of the time. Where there's no hand traps and no Charmy. This situation with the one Charmy is going to happen the standard amount of time, where let's say you have three. And also this 13.72% is coming from 15 hand traps. You have even more hand traps and there's like no interruptions going on. That's like even lower of a chance. So the 33.76% chance happening. And then this is a comp is basically given that they have, I draw Ash given they have Charmy, or I use Charmy given that they have Ash, or Ash given that whatever. Point is, this is the probability of both of these things. I think you would just be able to multiply those, right? This be 0.33 squared. Hold on. I flunked out of statistics, guys. That's not true. I did computer science is my I did those AI courses and stuff, and you had to, dude. Oh my god, I put a. Hold on. Okay, if my math is right, which it probably isn't, but I'm just going to assume that it is, 10.89% chance of this happening. Um, and again, these are all like 50% of the time. The 3.72 plus 33.76 plus 10.89 plus 3.64. This only accounts like 62% of scenarios that happen with Charmy being introduced into the game. And now I will say that the whole context is kind of like given that Charmies are involved. Um but there's more nuance because the other percentage of it is going to be there's a bunch of other hand traps available. Like all of the situations that are not accounted for here are the ones where there are other hand traps available. And they will be used and they will like add nuance to the game. So, but sure, okay, this is the given the Charmy situation. Um, this so seeing those multiples 3.64%. This also happens going first. But as a result, that means that going second, going first, your going first doesn't get hurt that much. It mostly gets hurt by the 96% chance that uh you see 1 or 0, and the 33% chance that you see 1. So 1 in 3 games, and then you multiply that by like half the time, basically. Like let's say 1 in 3 game ones, and sometimes you'll see it going first, sometimes you'll see it going second. It'll be like a 15% chance seeing it. It'll just be one more card that you see that can help you see more of your other hand traps, which actually end up like working as interruptions for these stronger decks that still, just to be clear, do not guarantee it. The other player has hand traps. The other player might not be able to charm you, but Charmy is not actually at the center of it. Charmy is like it's a draw card that helps you to get into those other ones, depending on if the strategy you're going against even can plays into it, or they choose to play into it, or they have strategies to play around it. And then now you start to up the number of Charmies. We get 15.35% of seeing multiple, which is amazing if you're going second. But then so it improves your going second drastically. People are going to play to in some they if they can play around one, they can't play around the other usually. It's very hard to play around both because if you're not summoning from your extra deck and deck, you're gonna have to start summoning from your hand and graveyard. And if there's no efficient way for you to get cards into your graveyard, then you're gonna be summoning a bunch of cards from your hand. So 15%, and then vice versa. Also, if it's like Meows is the other card that they, and this is also only given that I mean, seeing pairs could be, this is 15% of seeing pairs, but those pairs could very easily be 2 Perulias too. And 2 Perulias is just straight up not as good as 2 Fuelos. But then you see that going first and you're like, dude, I want to die. Right? And then there's the extreme case of like 8 to 9 Charmies. I think 8 Charmies is really the upper limit. If you're playing 9 Charmies, I think that's crazy. You play 8 Charmies and 25% chance of seeing multiples now, which again still includes when you're going first, where you can see 2 to 3 copies. Even actually, I didn't even account for whether you see like five copies of a Charmy when you have 8 cards, 8 of them. I guess it still accounts for that. It's still 25%. Okay, I suck at math now. Okay, I've been out of the business for a little bit, but at least my math is a little bit better than Gage Nimnim. Those who watch Prague, y'all know what I'm talking about. But shout out to the Age of Gage. But 25% chance of seeing these bozos in your, which still includes going second. And now you're also seeing stupid cards like you can see a pair of Meows against a deck that does not care about Meows. A lot of decks, even Malice doesn't even like. Malice is like, okay, that's pretty annoying, but like they also play the Adagnister cards, which summon from hand. And that's really the thing. And Mitsurugi, same thing. Like the way decks are being built now is that they're synergizing between all of these different engines that all play from different places and then work together really well. When was the last time we saw like a deck that was just like one deck? As soon as we had like Rizio come out, Rizio Fiendsmith immediately became the good one, and Malice was just always struggling. And it had to like work with like bestials to maybe even be like good, but then it was really, it didn't become really good until we started to get those Adagnisters. And Raizio itself didn't become really really good until we got those Mitsurugi cards that are not working with. And I think when you are in a world where you could argue that okay, maybe we just shouldn't have decks like that. We should stop designing decks like that. We should have very strong locks. But then deck building becomes stale, like completely stale. And I'm not saying deck building has been like mind blowing in the last year and a half. Um, it has been kind of like a lot of just mashing those engines together and then adding a bunch of hand traps, right? Like, let's be realistic. But then you completely get very like, the hell is happening? Okay, you get very very basic versions of these decks when you don't have that kind of synergy going, and then Yu-Gi-Oh just becomes boring. And Charmy just helps you add another layer of intrigue. And there's just so many complicated little scenarios that can come up. Like again, looking at this at the situation with March Hare Dormouse, there's there's even more complicated situations when you start to look at like decks like Mitsurugi Raizio, right? Like or even just like looking at the Raizio engine by itself. It has like, you have Ice Raizio and X Raizio are your main starters. And I love this, by the way. I really love that this one plays into Fuelos, and then this one plays into, in fact, I'll say Fuelos, Impulse. These are like the power cards it plays into. And then this one plays into um Perulia and Droll, right? This is an internal, like not even adding like another deck to bring more synergy, right? Where like, let's say like when Fiendsmith was more compatible back when Bonfire was at 3 and Fiendsmith just way more consistent to use with this engine rather than using Mitsurugi, we had the situation where Fiendsmith is helps you play through that Perulia. And it also like other cards that it helps you play through, right? So these are just like the interesting synergies that exist in the current format, where you realize like what does this tell you? If you're looking at this situation where my opponent is going to shotgun a Perulia, and then they have to use ice, they start to play through the Perulia a little bit better while still playing a little bit into it because they still have to normal some of that ice. But then now like Fua goes hard. And so both, you would literally need both. And even 2 Fuelos is like not enough. Even 2 Fuelos is not enough. Because especially like, yeah, you have to start with Ice Rising, and then that just plays into 2 Fuelos and you're just cooked, right? And then you don't have the Ash Blossom to call by. The 3.64% chance of that happening, by the way. Like, just remember that. And have that by like whether they're going first or second. So technically that's not correct math, but you get my point. Ice Raizio plays so hard into Fuelos, and then you get cooked, right? But if they've just used if you just start with X Raizio, you'll know by that point that Perulia is probably not being dropped because it's an inherent summon. You start to go for the X Raizio combo, you pass the Droll check. So then now like Fuelos is the one that's left. And it's like they kind of, when you have those two bodies on, they really like to get any value out of the Fuelos, they would maybe consider it doing it here, or they would have to like wait for you to normal summon the Ice Rise you and play into the food. In which case, you as a smarter player should simply just be thinking, and like you just should be thinking about that. Your next move should be to make Duo Drive. If they have like nothing else there, because then like if that gets hit with a hand trap, then you'd be kind of forced to go into your Ice Rise Seal to start making. Person has to think about when to actually drop the Fulos. Now, let's say the Maxi was all these situations, it wouldn't be the same. They wouldn't have to think about it. They would just drop the Maxi and they would reap the value no matter what the situation, right? Yeah, but all I see here is I think overall this is such a huge oversimplification of this. I feel like, and a lot of people initially responded to this person making this post that it's like, dude, there's no way you actually play Yu-Gi-Oh that much because this is like such a narrow-minded way of seeing it. And then they said, "Nah, dude, I'm totally playing so much Yu-Gi-Oh right now." And I'm not gonna come here and try to do like a deep investigation on whether they're playing that much Yu-Gi-Oh, because I'll be frank, I haven't been playing that much TCG, but I've been watching these games happen. I watched the NAWCQ. I've been, and just still the experience when I was playing during Allen format, which I did play a lot of that, where Charmy was probably at its worst. It still felt like, dude, I mean, man, there were so many times where I was playing Malice, and I played both. I played both with Malice and with Mitsurugi that format, and I played this cool Mitsurugi Razio Fiendsmith deck, and also Mitsurugi. I liked Mitsurugi, but there was times with Malice where they dropped the Fulos, and I'm playing into the Fulos, and I just do not care, and I still win because the advantage game. And even in Master Duel, Malice just came out, and I've been playing that. I played that a little bit. I haven't played it in a couple weeks, but I was playing that, and literally I get Max Seed, and in that format, it's especially crazy. Malice is able to like let you draw like 4 or 5 cards. Dude, you are going to get to your white binder and an extra body within like 3 or 4 draws, and then just make Appaloosa as your next play while you have the GWC set, and then pass. And it's like, okay, they have drawn like 4 or 5 cards, right? Maybe even 6 cards. And I shit you not, that shit doesn't end up being enough. It just doesn't. Appaloosa is already hard to deal with. Then I'm going for the GWC. Like if you're playing Fiendsmith, even if you're playing like a Malice deck, and I'm just able to stop you from putting bodies down, I still have all these hand traps. And then let's not forget the situations also where I'll just also have a Maxi. I think Fulos feels worthless to play in that format. I will be honest. I was playing early on in the national qualifiers. I was playing Fulos, and it felt constantly like this card was worthless. It didn't feel like it at best, it was like an anti-called by for Max C so that my Max C might resolve. And the people didn't even fall for the bait half the time. I cut Fulos in like my last few deck lists, and I ended up doing way better once I cut Fulos. And I don't. It's not a shitty card. It's just that it's not even close to Maxi. It's not like and that's the best one. It's such a perfectly balanced version. It only works going second. It's only draws for those extra deck and deck, which means it's only really punishing the best decks. And drawing that many cards is not even that as relevant for the best decks. The best decks don't actually want to draw all of their cards from their deck. I don't know if you knew this. They want to draw the hand traps, yeah, but they don't want to draw all their engine. The worst decks, they do want to draw a lot of their engine. They can't fit as many hand traps, and they're going to see that more often. And of course, yes, the worst decks do play into Charmy pretty hard too. Like I'm not gonna sit here like say like, dude, Salads and even Branded, they don't play into, yeah, of course they can play into Charmy. But okay, and I will end it off with, yes, it's so true. Even though it's not Maxi, It doesn't mean that it's sudden that that's enough of an argument to say Charmies aren't bad, right? Charmy doesn't create this simplified of a game loop. Charmy actually has a lot of different interactions. The high number of Charmies is only because of Malice and Mitsu. You hit those decks, you make weaker decks, you make decks more like the Justice Hunter decks that just play on your turn. You're not going to see as many Charmies. You're going to be seeing different types of Charmies. I guarantee you Perulia is going to be the stronger Charmy at some point, probably even going into a post-banless Justice Hunters. Real point is, I think Yu-Gi-Oh players, they get frustrated, get emotional, they don't actually look at the numbers, they don't actually consider the actual implications of these things. And they do I do think it is accurate to point out that going first is just definitely much stronger, and yes, the Charmies are kind of being designed to try to help like people go second rather than fix the problem. But realistically, I think the if we're going to talk about it like that, why don't they just fix the going first problem? And finally, also, a lot of people complain about lingering floodgates, and I feel like I have to address it. First of all, it's not a floodgate because it doesn't actually stop your opponent from playing. Your opponent gets to choose from that point on how much they want to play into that card and whether their deck is able to play that much into that card. And secondly, I don't think lingering effects as a result like are universally bad, right? You have cards like Paradise Smashers, which is insane. And I wish they just like they were like, dude, we're not gonna do like the big ban list yet, but we are gonna emergency ban Paradise Smashers so Justice Hunter's format doesn't go out of hand. Dimensional Barrier, cards like those actually stop. Drone Lockbird. Oh, I didn't even address one big thing is how Drone Lockbird interacts with this deck with these cards. You ever been in that situation where you have Fulos and Droll and Lockbird, and you know you're going against Mitsurugi where Droll and Lockbird might hit harder, but you do kind of want to test out this Fulos because Fulos will still do a good job and you're not going to be able to use it later. You might be able to use Droll and Lockbird on your turn. You end up activating Fulos while they're resolving a card to add to hand so you can check whether they have an Ash or something. They use the Ash, then since Droll and Lockbird is a quick effect, you get to drop Droll and Lockbird afterwards, and you get to take advantage of the Droll, right? And this is all given they don't happen to open prayers and a fucking ritual card in their opening hand that they can just use in the draw phase. So your Drone Lockbird is useless anyway, because that's the fucking thing about Drone Lockbird is it's only useful like the decks that are good against Drone Lockbird. I don't know. I've been ranting for a little while. I've probably repeated myself a bunch of times at this point. All hail Charmies. I love that shit. Farfa, gotta work on this game, bro. I don't know. Shout out to Farfa still. I still love that man as a youth. Okay. Um. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the Charmy situation. Charmies are great. Stop this shit. Stop this nonsense.